What's going on, folks? It's X-Men 97 Day. It's Wednesday. Episode 7 has just dropped. Give me a second. I'm going to share out the link to this live stream so some other people can join. They know how to get here. Um, and then if you want to start anytime you want to put anything in the chat, talk about whatever you want regarding X-Men 97 or anything else. I really don't care. This is our live chat. We could do whatever we want. Put it in the chat. We'll chat about it. Give me 1 second, though, while I share out that link, and we will get started. Please don't fall. All right, there we go. But one heck of an episode today. Again, give me a second while I'm sharing this out. Just sharing out a link so that other people can get here. We'll go to this. Hopefully everyone's day has been going well. My day has been okay, to say the least. It could be worse, right? Could be worse. Woke up to find out that our furnace for our house isn't working, and it's still getting relatively cold here at night. So hopefully someone's gonna be able to come out today and take a look at it at least. I'm kind of worried because it's kind of old and probably needs to be replaced, and I'm not entirely sure if we have all of the money lying around for that to be replaced. But hopefully everyone else's day is going pretty darn well. Other than that, I can't complain too much. Cannot complain too much. All right, link is shared. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm also really apologize for not the greatest lighting today. It's not great outside. I really rely on the sunlight from this window, and it's a rainy, cloudy day. But other than that, again. So how about X-Men 97? I have my notes. What did everyone think? There was a lot of stuff happened in whatever it was, 30 minutes or less, basically. A lot of stuff happened like they normally do in every single episode. And again, another great episode. As far as I'm concerned. And now we're heading into the 3-part finale, which is pretty wild that we're getting that close. I can't even imagine what we're going to see in the next 3 episodes. It's going to get absolutely crazy. Other than that, though, we'll just start at the top. But if we want to start somewhere else, we can go for it. Just put it in the chat and we will go from there. I mean, obviously the first part, very not great. Gambit's funeral, everyone's there with the exception of Rogue, and I guess the sermon, right? Or the kind of the speech that Kurt had was just great. Kurt is great. There's other parts that he had that are great that we'll maybe chat about a little bit. And it was good. It was a good little part. And then we go right into Rogue, right where when she's not there, and this was in the featurette that Marvel released yesterday, and she's just around, just destroying this base that she figured that whatchamacallit, Gurich would be there. She's really looking for Gurich and Trask, and obviously none of them are there. We get our first little like quote unquote crossover cameo of Thunderbolt Ross, which I thought was interesting to see. I did not expect that we would see him at all in this show. But that was pretty interesting to see. Super J, good to see you, my guy. I'm so glad you're here. Always here. Appreciate you. Good scene. Yeah, that was an amazing fight scene, kind of just like Rogue going to town. I mean, generally, I feel like we see how powerful she is, but I feel like we never really get to see truly how powerful she is. because normally she's in a team, right? And she doesn't need to take on a whole bunch of stuff by herself. But that was a great scene, great fight scene. And then right after that, we have the X-Men headed to, well, Cyclops is talking to the now president. He became elected president. I cannot remember his name. He was a senator, always on the side of the mutants. And then he became elected president towards the end or in the last season of the animated series. And that was always, it was good to see him, but it was also kind of really hard to see. And again, I don't even remember Cyclops saying his name, and I cannot remember his name. But again, always on the side of mutants, but still just like not really able to help, which is kind of like, that kind of seems to be a big theme in today's episode of just like people agreeing, quote unquote, being on the side of mutants, but afraid of publicly showing their support for the mutants. Kelly, yes, Robert Kelly, that is his name. Thank you, Super J. Yeah, Robert Kelly is his name. But the thing that I've noticed, the main theme in today's episode is just like people. There's always people who want to support the mutants, but they're afraid of actually publicly showing it. And we'll go through some examples that I picked up in today's episode. But that seems to be the case for real life, right? Like anyone who would support gay rights or anything really for that matter, any minority cause. But sometimes people are afraid to actually show it or be public about it because of the repercussions that they may face, whether that be from friends or income, right? And we see both of those things right now in this episode. But essentially, the X-Men finally go make their way to Genosha to go help clean up and see if there's any more people around and alive. Essentially, Cyclops is really taking it hard and on himself again to be the leader, especially with Storm not here right now, to be the leader of the team and to kind of replace Professor X and try to do his best. And you can really see that he's like anguished with himself, let alone with all of the stuff that he's just like been going through personally, right? With having a double wife, a son that he no longer has. He, had him for like less than a day and then sent him off into his future. And there we go. But we do learn that some people, obviously, a lot of people died. We notably saw like Callisto and Leech. They're no longer alive. Sebastian Shaw, and what we did assume initially was Emma Frost also died. That is until, I can't think right now. Jean and Cyclops found her, and she's had supposedly some sort of dormant mutation that came through, which is a thing, by the way. There could be a second dormant X gene or a dormant gene that isn't brought up in the comics and then eventually does. So it's not like something they just made up, right? Although it's always that. Yeah, Professor X is going to have the worst timing to show up. That is for sure. Although he obviously, I think, learned about it, but he's not going to be very happy. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm really interested. I do know that Marvel Reader, I don't know if he's here right now. Supposedly 2 people are here from what I can tell. And his theories of what was going to happen. So far, part of what happened in today's episode, I believe, is what he had mentioned in a thread that he posted maybe like 2 weeks ago at this point. Right after that scene, for the most part, the next big one is Rogue shows up to this kind of wintry cabin somewhere. I can't remember if they said where or not. And then we finally get that, again, cameo / crossover with Captain America. They go into, obviously, it was like a secret facility for this organization that we don't know yet. But we kind of do know, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But OZT. And again, so back to like the main theme of what I saw in today's episode of like people wanting to support minority groups or others, but not publicly showing it because they're afraid that something bad's going to happen to them, is basically this conversation with Rogue and Cap. She was like, well, we're going to head to Mexico. We're going to go ahead and find Garrick because obviously they're not here anymore. And he basically was just like, I would love to go with you, but I can't, because essentially like red tape. And Rogue calls him out on it right away. She's like, you know what? I thought you were in support of mutants, but apparently you're not. And he's like, yeah, my hands are tied. I can't just show up to Mexico and start bashing people, right? Which I understand why he would not want to do that. But basically, again, that just goes to show that people are afraid of the repercussions of what else might happen in support of mutants. And so, Rogue is just like, well, if your hands are tied, I'm just going to take your shield and throw it. Have fun going to go get it, Cap, which I thought was great. Then essentially after that, the next big thing is like, again, goes along with this theme here. Bobby finally decides that he's going to go ahead and confront his parents and tell them that he is a mutant. And I thought it was actually really funny when he goes in and tells them, and she's like, "Oh, we're relieved." And he's like, "What? That was it? Like you're relieved?" And she's like, "Yeah, like we've had 4 houses almost burned down. I'm pretty sure we just didn't have like pirates come to our house or whatever it was, Somali pirates come to our house and set them on fire." So clearly they knew something was up, but they were just waiting for him to say something, which is a great, I think from a parent standpoint, I think that's pretty great that they allowed him to do that and share that in his own time and way. Yeah, best parents in the world. Totally. Like that was great. I think the biggest thing though, again, we see she doesn't mind that he's a mutant, but we're not going to say it publicly that you're a mutant, because that's going to affect business and people are not going to continue to basically invest in what they do. And for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know very much, but his parents are very wealthy in Brazil. I don't know what it is that they do to be so wealthy, but clearly they don't want investors to pull back and to have them lose money in business or businesses that they run, essentially, because of just all the things that are happening, right? Political stuff with mutants, blah, 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 blah. Again, there's just this, we support you, but we're not going to do it publicly because we're afraid of the repercussions. So there's that. Then basically Rogue goes to Mexico to confront Garrick. She absorbs his, life force, and I guess gets to see a little bit of his memories. We didn't really get to see much of that for the most part. She just, again, eventually woke up in Mexico, and the X-Men team were there. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if I missed it, but I'm not entirely sure how they knew that she was there, unless I'm assuming, right? Like Rogue has like some sort of tracker on her so they could figure out where she is. But I wasn't sure if they said how they found her or not. Either way, it doesn't matter. But the X-Men team is there. It was finally like a good, maybe not full closure, but it was a great way to help her. You could see, obviously, the X-Men team, basically her family being there to help her have some closure with the loss of Gambit as well as Magneto. And obviously it was done on purpose, right? It was great. Kurt was there again. Great conversation of basically letting her know that she wasn't the reason that they died, and she's not at fault for not being able to save either one of them or both of them, but she was the one who helped them live their life while they were here. And obviously in Mexico, they were celebrating Day of the Dead, right? Which is essentially where you celebrate your dead, family, relatives, all those things. And again, that was done on purpose. But again, just kind of like nice to have that all together to help Rogue. And then we really get into the good stuff. Essentially, they learn that they need to go to Madripoor to go find Trask. He, which was also weird because he like contacted them somehow while they were on Genosha. Either way, they go to Madripoor. They find out that basically Trask has nothing else to live for. He's ready to pretty much kill himself because of what happened at Genosha. Him basically being the reason that occurred, because from the end of last episode, we learned that Sinister was able to get his DNA something along those lines to help with the master mold of those sentinels that we saw at Genosha. And clearly, what do I want to say? Trask didn't know or doesn't know much else information other than what he already did, essentially. Again, so he's just pretty much ready to kill himself. And he almost does. Rogue saves him and asks him that. And she's like, you know what? I don't have anything else either. So see you later. Which was kind of like a very like turning moment, right? Of like Wolverine was like, this is what we all wanted to do, but she just had the balls to do it. And basically Morph is like, is this what we turned into? Like, is this really who we are now? Obviously he's concerned of like their persona, even the rest of the team too. They're kind of like, Rogue, what did you just do? Like in front of a bunch of people, all of this stuff, right? But come to find out, that Trask just turns into a prime sentinel, basically. So all of that is leading into kind of, I guess, a storyline, and we get an introduction to him in just a second. Well, I kind of skipped, but Girick does eventually die because someone at the time, we don't know who he is, comes in and changes Girick's music that he's listening to from like opera, I think, or classical, and turns it to Purple People Eater. And that's a callback to at the end of the episode. We kind of know, or helps us learn, that it's the same person, right? But anyway, back to the fight in Madripoor against the Prime Sentinel, which is now Trask. Cable shows up, helps them with basically setting off an EMP, so it destroys all the electromagnetic stuff, within however much of an area. And there's obviously a quick connection between Cyclops and Cable, but Cable's like, I don't have time for this, Dad. We gotta figure some stuff out. And that's really the big thing. The big thing that is revealed, though, is a Prime Sentinel. And now knowing too that OZT, which I'll talk about in a second, is leading down a certain storyline, essentially. I don't know much about it, so hopefully some people here do. But also in the fight, we got a little cameo of Iceman, Bobby Drake, which I know people have been waiting for. Morphed into him. So that was kind of cool to see. At first I was like, oh, Bobby, where'd you come from? But then obviously it was Morph. But yeah, so then we learn that Sinister is not necessarily, he's part of who's behind this big Sentinel stuff, right? And we saw was it the end of last episode where the Sentinel was? Or in 2 episodes ago? I can't remember now. Basically, there was like a person in the middle of the Sentinel, and basically it was theorized that it was Nimrod. And that's going to play into who this person is who killed Girick, and who we saw at the end of this episode with Magneto. So we did learn that Magneto is still alive, which a lot of us kind of thought, right? Like they weren't just going to kill him off that easily. But he's been captured by Bastion. And I don't know a ton about Bastion. So if some people do, please put it in the chat. I would love to hear. Also, if you're here, if this is your first time, please just like put stuff in the chat, whatever you want to chat about. We can chat about something else. It doesn't really matter. This is our live stream. Obviously, it's about X-Men 97, talking about today's episode, kind of like breaking it down, just talking spoilers, giving people a place to chat. That is, I do love how Morph is just mainly used for cameos, essentially. He hasn't really had a major role besides that, essentially just like being cameos for other characters, which is a cool way to like bring them in without having to like have them be somewhat of like a secondary character, but also to like see them, to like get the feel of them being there, but not having to pay another voice actor or whatever, right? But it is kind of cool how he's being used for that. Anyway, from what I know, so OZT is Operation Zero Tolerance, which was essentially started by in the comics, Bastion and Girick, to basically get rid of all of the mutants across the entire world. Now, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, please correct me if I am, anyone who's here or watching this on the replay. Bastion is like from the future, but not like kind of um he's like a clone or like used technology from Nimrod, who's like far off in the future. And that's who we saw in the Sentinel. And we kind of saw that in the beginning intro. We got a better view of him in the beginning intro. And I think there was a in Rogue when she drained Giric of his life force, there was a quick view of Nimrod's like face head essentially. And so like, and when we went and when the X-Men went to Madripoor, Beast was like, all of this like cyberkinetic technology is like years ahead of where we are right now of technology. So like, how is it here? So Nimrod / Bastion, that would make the most sense. And from my understanding, Bastion has been created with the technology from Nimrod, and he's like sort of from the future, sort of not from the future. Either way, he like rose through the ranks in the US government, in the comics at least. And again, which would mean make the most sense with him teaming up with Giric and them wanting to eliminate all mutants from the entire world. Again, hence Operation OZT or Operation Zero Tolerance. And they end up using technology from Sentinels to create Prime Sentinels, which is basically creating a human and turning them in to a Sentinel. Bastion was created when Master Mold and Nimrod merged together. Thank you, Super J. Again, I don't have the most X-Men knowledge, especially when it comes to comics. I'm like trying to read through more. As most of us know, it can get very complicated very quickly. And the little bit quickly that I could learn, basically, once we knew that Bastion was around potentially, I was like, this is convoluted. But essentially, he just wants to get rid of mutants, right? But he is like sort of human, sort of not human, basically. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward. I don't know. I think this is part of like the Onslaught storyline, and I don't know a ton about it. But moving forward, obviously, the Prime Sentinels are basically humans with Sentinel technology in them, which is what we saw with Trask, and clearly much stronger than even regular Sentinels. So that will prove to be a problem for the X-Men. So it will be interesting to kind of see how this does moving forward. Obviously, Professor X is going to show up at some point. They've also been watching. They, meaning Bastion and Sinister, know that Professor X is alive. And he's probably going to end up kind of like releasing that information, would be my guess, to the general public to like put the X-Men in a bad light, would be my guess. Because he was like, oh, the X-Men have been lying all along and to the people, essentially. And obviously they didn't. The X-Men knew that he was gone. A lot of people thought that Professor X was dead. Obviously he's not. But I think he's going to put that out to the general public to like put them in a bad light, to have people just like hate mutants even more, essentially, right? Like they've been lying to you. And my guess is like he might even say like something along the lines of like Professor X has gone into space and is trying to create this alliance with this, alien group who's going to come here to Earth and take over, essentially, would be my guess. And that again would put mutants in not a very good light of the general public, probably continue to create a divide of the people that don't like them, and maybe some more people, like put more people to that side to make Bastion and Mr. Sinister's job even easier to, again, rid the mutants of the world. That's my guess. That would be my thought. Another great episode, in my opinion. Let's see here. Anyone else have any other like thoughts? Or like anyone have any ideas of like moving forward? I know very little regarding the Onslaught storyline, and we don't have to like reveal a whole bunch of stuff, but obviously this is going to be adapted in some sort of way. Again, I don't know much about it. Boop. No. All right. Other than that, we don't have our usual crowd here today, which is totally fine. People can watch this on the replay. That's not a bad thing. I'm glad, Super J, you're here. If you're still here, I'm not sure. I just see one person is here. Not many people in today. No, it's okay. It is what it is. You know, people have lives. I'm not beholden to it. Totally fine. But other than that, you know, another good episode. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see what we have for this 3-part finale. The fact that it's like 3 parts is going to be wild. And I'm interested to see if there'll be more crossovers. I'm assuming we will see Captain America again at some point, and maybe even some other Avengers. I would love to see Spider-Man pop in here. That would be so cool. But I think overall, another great episode. I don't, again, have many thoughts beyond kind of what I just said in terms of what's going to be happening, basically, in terms of how Bastion's going to paint the X-Men in not a good light for quote unquote lying to the people that Professor X wasn't dead. But I do think that the X-Men are in not very good shape, right? They just lost thousands upon thousands of people, and X-Men, I mean also mutants, right? Like they're not going to have many people on their side. They're gonna be in some trouble when they end up trying to go up against whatever it is Bastion is creating. Also, very interesting that from what it seems like, Bastion may be turning Magneto into a Prime Sentinel. I don't know if that's exactly going to happen. I could be very wrong, but that's at least the sentiment you get from that final scene there. And that could also be a very big problem, because I don't know if the person has to die for like the Prime Sentinel like thing to be activated, or if even if the person is alive, like they can still have like those Sentinel quote unquote powers be activated. Yeah, I hope Magneto makes it out alive. He doesn't look like he's in good shape. Obviously, he's got the power dampening kind of collar on, so he can't do too much. He's obviously bound together, and he doesn't look like he's in good shape. So if the X-Men can find him in time, he should be relatively okay. I would doubt. I don't know. I don't know if there's a storyline that Magneto turns into a Sentinel. I don't think there is. I haven't heard anything. I feel like that would be like a big thing. Or or Bastion will use Magneto as like bait, essentially, to draw the X-Men in to basically take them out, would be my only other guess. Because other than the X-Men, there's really like, yes, mutants have other powers, but the X-Men are really the only most organized mutant group fighting for all of mutants, right? So that would be my only other guess, that Bastion would be using for Magneto to like bring him to lure the X-Men to the whatchamacallit, to wherever he is, to basically take them out, essentially. Hopefully the X-Men would be smart, though. Cyclops is a very good tactician. I saw this in someone else's video the other day, and they were talking about who is the greatest tactician in like the Marvel universe, and it was basically up between Cyclops and Captain America, right? Like Steve has all of the war history and just all of the things that he's been through, right? And he's totally, I mean, arguably one of the best tacticians in all of Marvel. But I feel like Cyclops doesn't get his due, right? Like Cyclops knows what he's doing when it comes to stuff, and he can make decisions on a quick instance. And we kind of saw that today, or at least that rung a bell in my head when that blast went off when they were in Madripoor in the building, and he was like, Gene, take care of the building, I'll take care of the rubble. And then, they're falling down and they're able to, avoid lots of lives being lost because of the building. And all of that was just from a quick decision that Cyclops had made, again, because of his experience. And he is probably arguably one of the best tacticians when it comes to fighting and all of those things in all of Marvel, essentially. Well, other than that, I don't have much else to say unless we want to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine trailer. There's not much other news, I don't think, regarding Marvel right now. But other than that, Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, I'm usually into really watching the trailers and all the featurettes, but now I don't want to watch anymore after this second one. Like I don't think that they've given much away about the movie, but I don't really want to see any more because I just want to be surprised when I go watch the movie. Excuse me. Like I'm generally one to want to watch all of the things, but I don't want to not be surprised when I go to the movie. And honestly, I'm definitely not one that wants to know all of this stuff. It was definitely a fun trailer. I enjoyed it. Like it was great. It definitely highlighted Wolverine a little bit more, more so than Deadpool. And we obviously got a little bit more info on like Cassandra Nova being there. We got some cameos from some other characters that are going to be in there, right? Lady Deathstrike, Toad, and supposedly Callisto was in there. And someone said Pyro. We know Pyro was in the first trailer. Who was the other guy? There's another person. I can't remember. Azazel. Azazel was there. So that'll be fun to see. I do think it's just going to be a really good movie, right? Like classic Deadpool movie. Lots of cursing, lots of very inappropriate stuff. I will say though, in my personal opinion, I feel like Deadpool as a comic book character is just not a good character. Like I've read a few issues of his main comic and it's just not interesting. Like he's kind of like I get that that's what Deadpool is. He's kind of an a-hole, right? And I get that and that's his character. But he's just always that. And I haven't read enough of him to like see him grow, but I feel like this is a bad comparison, but in a way it's a good one. He's the complete opposite of Peter Parker. Peter Parker is so relatable on so many like levels because he's just a regular guy. He can't pay his bills, right? Like I feel like a lot of us can relate to that. And he's just like a people person. He's trying to be the best that he can for everyone, including his family, Aunt May, all this stuff. And Deadpool is just like the complete opposite. He's an immature a-hole. And again, I get that's his character. I like that for his character. But from a character development standpoint, Deadpool doesn't develop too much. Now, I did see an argument against this where like he eventually has a daughter, needs to take over something, and there is some development of that. But like, again, he's just kind of like this immature a-hole. And that's fine if that's his character. But from a comic book standpoint, I can't really stand like when I read him and I see him in comics, I'm just like, this is kind of silly and dumb. And that's what comics are sometimes, right? Just silly, which is totally fine. But I just can't get into his stories, his issues, stuff like that. As opposed to like other characters. I just recently watched the first two movies for the first time, not knowing anything about the character. That was me when I first watched them, right? I had no idea who Deadpool was, even that he was like associated with the X-Men in some sort of fashion or way. And like, I just thought they were funny movies, right? Like I like them for what they were. The first one was definitely better. The second one was just kind of taking it over the top again. And again, that's what it is. That's what Deadpool is. It's totally fine. But it's almost like that it's the same thing, kind of like reiterated again. I think this one will be better than the second one, maybe not better than the first, but it'll be better just from the standpoint of like they're clearly starting to try to tie together a lot of other stuff when it comes to like the multiverse and what they're doing with the TVA and all this other stuff, right? Like that little portal at the end, no one knows if that was like a Doctor Strange portal or from Wong, whoever, right? But like they're trying to obviously tie into the multiverse, the TVA, all of that kind of stuff, which I think will be good and exciting to see now that it has like kind of what do I want to say, like a bigger purpose, quote unquote, versus just like being another Deadpool installment. Yeah. I just think it's almost to me like again, I really like Deadpool, especially the Ryan Reynolds character. Like he is the character. Like when I think of Deadpool, I think of Ryan Reynolds. I think of the live action Deadpool. I do not think the comic book character whatsoever. And even when I like am reading Deadpool in comics, I envision and like hear Ryan Reynolds' voice. Like I much more like Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool than just like the comic book character Deadpool. But it's almost again almost like the same thing. And again, that's fine for what it is. But I always like equate it to like having um like they're playing the same role, right? Like The Rock pretty much plays the same role. Kevin Hart pretty much plays the same role over and over again. I can't think of who it is. Um, the actor. It will come to me. He's in Wedding Crashers. Vince Vaughn. He like plays that same role after Wedding Crashers like over and over and over again. And you just kind of like, aren't you tired of like having this same role and just like in every single movie, right? Even if it's a different movie. Like I understand Ryan Reynolds being the immature a-hole that is Deadpool because it's another Deadpool movie. And Ryan Reynolds kind of has that same shtick like every time for all of his characters, but not always, right? Like Free Guy was kind of like that. There's another one where he is with a kid and it's like his younger self or like the kid sees his future self, who is Ryan Reynolds, I believe, or something along those lines. Ryan Reynolds is not that like same kind of like immature a-hole shtick, at least in that movie. Or much so very less than usual. We'll say that. But the trailer was fun. It was good. I think it should be a good movie. I'm excited for it, but I'm going to try to not watch any more trailers or featurettes for it because I just want to be surprised. I am going to have to try and stay away. I just realized that I am going to be away with my family the weekend that it's releasing. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to see it when it comes out. That stinks. So now I'm going to have to like lay low off of social media for a few days and just like not look at anything. And of course, everything's going to be flooded regarding Deadpool and Wolverine as soon as I open up anything, including my like YouTube homepage. Like it's all just going to be flooded with that. I'm just going to have to stay away from it all until I can see it. I may have to go on like a Tuesday in the middle of the day so I can go and see it, and then I'll go and see it with my wife again at another time. I don't know. We'll see. It's just I was kind of upset once I found out. And I was like, "Oh, we booked something and we're not going to be here. Dang it." um, Either way, it'll be good. It'll be a good movie. I'm excited for it. I like that it's tying a whole bunch of stuff together. The fact that people are like, "This is not going to be good. It's not going to help Marvel. It's not going to be, people are cautious about it, leery about it doing well." Like, come on. Come on, people. I would say this is probably the most hyped I've seen a Marvel movie in a while. Probably since I don't even know, honestly. Like probably before COVID. Like I feel like COVID took it out of a lot of people with like I don't remember this much hype for Quantumania or not even Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And a lot of people were excited for that movie, but I feel like there's not as much hype about it. I think part of it is just like Ryan Reynolds and just like him and his marketing style with what he does, right? But I just feel like there wasn't that much hype. Even like Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Um, I feel like most of these movies, yeah, like No Way Home had some relatively big hype. I still feel like this is even has more hype than No Way Home and most of the other movies. Um, so it's I'm excited for it. It should be good. It's Marvel's like only MCU movie this year. So that'll be interesting to see how they stand alone on that. Although they're knocking it out of the park with X-Men 97. I'm excited to see what else is releasing this year. Agatha, whatever the show is called now. It's been changed like four times. Um, hopefully that does pretty well and is fun to watch as well. And I feel like they've made some changes to whatever was happening in that after they were like, we're pulling back on all of the stuff that we're doing, and we're gonna have like actual showrunners, all of that stuff now. So hopefully Agatha, um, again, whatever that show is going to be called, it's been changed like four times now. Does pretty well. I liked WandaVision, although it's not my favorite Disney Plus show. I know for a lot of people it is, but it is not my favorite. I'd probably have to say Loki. Um, Agatha is such a wreck behind the scenes. I have not seen much about it. Again, it's like one of those things that I just haven't seen. I just see some stuff every now and then. Um, but I haven't seen anything else about Agatha, like behind the scenes stuff. Besides the fact that they just like keep changing the name. Um, so I don't know. I think, yeah, hopefully that one does okay. I can't like I'm so tired of people just like ragging on Marvel. Loki was so good. Yeah, that's probably my favorite Disney Plus show. Um, just like Tom Hiddleston. I just love his development as Loki. And I know some people don't like Loki being turned into quote unquote a good guy. Because he's always like a villain in the comics. But he also does help out in the comics when he needs to, from the little that I have read. But yeah, Loki was so good. And I tend to group season 1 and 2 together on that. But it was just so good. Tom Hiddleston's so good. And having Owen Wilson did a great job. I still think Jonathan Majors is a phenomenal actor, and it's a shame that he had to be let go for the person that he is, unfortunately. Hopefully he's doing better now. I know he didn't really get put to jail. All of that's good. That whole relationship that he had with that woman, it was just toxic on both ends. Both ends. Both people were not good to each other from what I took from that. With the little that I know, without going into too many details, Jonathan Majors, along with his girlfriend at that time, both were toxic people. But yeah, not very good. The yeah, next year though should be fun. Next year should be fun. We have Brave New World. It was a huge shock, like totally crazy, totally such a huge shock. And I was a huge Jonathan Majors fan because I think he's just a great actor. He's such a good actor. If you're joining in, we have moved on past X-Men 97. I apologize, but if you want to talk about it, put it in the chat. We will gladly go back. We were just kind of talking regular Marvel stuff right now. If you're here and watching, but we can talk more X-Men 97. I know that we kind of moved away from it, but we can go back. I'm more than happy to go back and talk about today's episode of X-Men 97. We're just kind of moving on to like future Marvel projects at this point. Basically talking about how I feel like Wolverine and Deadpool have the most hype that I've seen like for a movie since like pre-COVID, honestly. I don't remember this much hype for a movie for a while, a Marvel movie being said, like I don't remember this much hype for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Quantumania, not even No Way Home. And No Way Home was huge. Um, I like the episode. Clumsy Lemon, nice to see you. But I'm curious, who is the fan favorite mystery character? Black Panther was extremely huge in the US. We had non-comic fans in cosplay. No, totally. I was super pumped for Black Panther. Um, Black Panther, the original movie, is basically what got me into Marvel, essentially. Like, I have such a soft spot. That may not be a good word, but like, I have such a soft spot for Black Panther, and I went to go see it opening night or whatever Friday is, not Thursday night into Friday. Come on, people. Why are we making movies now out the night before they're actually out for like a few hours? I got a life, right? I got a job. We can't be going on Thursday night. Anyway, but yeah, Black Panther was awesome. And I did see some of that on like social media, just like all these people like dressing up, um, you know, doing Wakanda Forever everywhere. Like so good. Like I really enjoyed Black Panther. And I'm always hyped for these Marvel movies. Like I will be the first person to tell you I'm a Marvel stan to the fullest. Um, I'm a Marvel stan to the fullest. That doesn't mean that it doesn't come with some criticism, that's for sure. But I'm a huge Marvel fan, and so like I love almost everything they put out, almost everything. And again, that doesn't mean it doesn't come with critiques. I remember watching Black Panther with my family; it was pretty good, except the romance part was quite awkward for me. I'm assuming you're talking about like kind of the awkward, the romance between kind of like Shuri and the Moore would be my guess. But Black Panther was amazing. I don't recall. This is also just me like not remembering in the moment of like how much hype there was at the time for those specific movies. There might have been more. I just can't recall, right? Because I didn't like take notes. But I feel like there's so much hype around Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah, I used to regularly watch the movies as they came out. I still do for Marvel stuff. I generally don't find myself going to the theater for anything else. The only other movie that I've been to recently in a theater that wasn't Marvel, um, yeah, so our Marvel love gives us the right to give valid criticism. Totally, totally. There's no way to grow without criticism. Valid criticism. We'll say that, right? No, there's no hating here just to hate. Um, Wolverine has been overused, right? And I think that we're seeing the X-Men 97 thrive without utilizing Wolverine as like the main character essentially, right? Which is good. Um yeah, I'm the same way. My wife and I would always watch all comic movies together. Usually my wife goes with me. It's kind of like a date night. The only, like I said before I went off on a tangent, the only other movie that I saw recently in theaters that was not a Marvel movie was Barbie. Um That was it. That's the only one I can think of that I went to recently that was not a Marvel movie. And most other movies, I'm kind of like, I feel like that's just kind of the trend now is like, I'm not going to go spend all this money, especially if it's going to come to streaming in, like 2 months down the road. Like people are like, I can wait. And I kind of feel the same way. Um, yeah. X-Men 97 has been doing a great job. So for Randy and Clumsy, thank you both for being here. Glad you're here. What did you all think of today's episode? I know again we kind of went on a tangent, but I'm here. I'm here to talk about it. Let's talk about it. I know Clumsy Lemon put in like who the fan favorite mystery character is. That is Bastion. And I don't know a ton about him. Earlier, Super J in the chat put that the little that I know is like he's kind of human, kind of not human, and he's kind of made in conjunction with Tech from Nimrod. Um, the MC Randy, let's see. It's kind of like the One Punch Man theory if you're an anime fan. I am not an anime fan. I don't dislike it. It's just not my thing. The MC isn't really the show. It's the great supporting characters. I'm glad Wolverine. Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Like the Wolverine doesn't need to be, and it's proven that the X-Men can thrive without Wolverine being the main character. But not Nimrod, sorry, Bastion is basically in the comics was formed when Master Mold and Nimrod kind of like went together. along those lines, basically. So he's kind of human, kind of not human. So he's kind of like from the future, but not from the future. It's very complicated. I think the main thing to know is that I can't remember again at the end of last episode or 2 episodes ago, we saw like that person in the middle of the Sentinel. There's a lot of theories that that was Nimrod. Um, and we kind of got a closer view of that today in the intro. So that was true. And then when Rogue kind of like drained Garrick, he's kind of like a cyborg, essentially, basically, for a lack of a better term. Yes. And then, from my understanding, he was like adopted or like taken in by some lady who ended up calling him, because his name is Sebastian, I believe, who called him Bastion. Um, and then he worked his way up through, in the comics, worked his way up through the US government pretty quickly. And then him and Garrick team up and basically create what we saw today, OZT, Operation Zero Tolerance, which is essentially a plan to rid the entire Earth of mutants. So obviously we saw today that Bastion ended up killing Garrick, Gyrick, whatever, however you say his name. And then obviously he's working in conjunction with Sinister to create these prime sentinels. And that was something that he created as well in this Operation Zero Tolerance. Prime sentinels are essentially humans with sentinel technology inside of them. And, you know, they do all the things. Now, I don't know much about prime sentinels or, again, even Bastion from the comic standpoint. All I know is that apparently, based on the show, these prime sentinels are even stronger than the regular sentinels, which is not a good thing. And my kind of like theory, at least for a little bit, I don't know, we're not talking like huge theory moving forward. We're talking, so obviously, Bastion and Sinister have been spying on Professor X, and they know that he's still alive and out in space. Obviously, he's on his way back. But I think that I think Bastion is going to show the world or the general public that, quote unquote, the X-Men have been lying to them, that their leader, who we all thought was dead, is not dead, and that he is like creating this alliance with these space people to come back to Earth to eventually like take over the mutants and whatever their alliance is, right? So that will paint the X-Men in a bad light to help kind of even more mutant haters and maybe some of the general public who are like kind of in the middle go towards the side of mutant hating and not really support mutants or X-Men. That's my thought. Before the episode, I thought Big Bad was Apocalypse. He hates peace. He thinks mutants are stronger, so they should rule. But Bastion fits, though. Yeah, from my understanding, I don't think Apocalypse is going to play much of a role right now, at least. This seems to be going along the lines of at least that comic kind of like thread of Operation Zero Tolerance, Bastion, all this stuff. Who knows how else they're going to fit other things in? It will be interesting. And again, I don't have all of that much knowledge, at least when it comes to X-Men comics, because it is very convoluted. And I'm still relatively new to comics. But I did want to say the one thing that I thought I noticed as a big theme in today's episode is accepting people, or especially minorities, for who they are privately, but being afraid to show it publicly for, fear of repercussions, whatever they may be, right? We saw it with Rogue when she ends up talking with Captain America once they find out that there's this organization, OZT, Operation Zero Tolerance. And she's like, well, let's head to Mexico and go get Gyrick and let's go take care of some things. And Cap is like, I would love to, but I can't because my hands are kind of tied, right? Kind of like government red tape, but he also doesn't necessarily want to paint himself in a bad picture just by going to Mexico and just like bashing heads. But Rogue calls him out immediately and is like, I thought that you supported mutants, and if you don't anymore, well, I can see that, I guess, right? And again, he's just like, my hands are tied. my hands are tied and I can't do anything. And I thought it was great when Rogue just like took his shield, was like, you know what? If your hands are tied, I'm gonna just throw this way. Have fun going to find it. Um, the other thing too, the other kind of big one that we saw was um, there was one scene trailer with Gambit and Nightcrawler fighting bad guys. It wasn't an intro. Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. Um, they think they. I don't know if they will undo Genosha with time travel. I feel like that could be a possibility. They might. They might. That's part of like the storyline with Cable trying to save them potentially, right? But they might not. I like we know in the comics that that's like a thing and people come back. But I feel like that was such a big event that undoing it right away, at least right now, would seem insignificant. Um, oh, they might paint that picture that Rogue killed Gyrick, but who knows? Yeah, I'm kind of along the lines that they shouldn't undo Genosha too. Like it's again that draws or plays down the significance of these major events, death, all of this stuff, right? Where they're just like, you could just come back to life. Don't worry about it, right? Um, yeah. But back to what I was saying of like people, supporting minorities privately, but afraid to do it publicly because of repercussions, which we see all the time in this world, right? Whether it's in private conversations with people stuff like that. Was when Bobby finally confronts his mother by telling her that he's immune, which I thought was, again, kind of funny given the fact that he tells her and she's like, "Oh, what a relief." And he's like, "What? What do you mean? Like that's it?" Um and she's like, "Yeah, we have like had 3, 4 houses like catch on fire and we knew it wasn't just from like some Somali pirates like commandeering the house. We knew it had to be you." Um but also I think great parenting, when we said this earlier in the chat, was just like great parenting. Like they knew that he was different and they wanted him to tell them in their own way and not bring it up when he wasn't ready. So the fact that they waited as parents to let Bobby tell them that he's different, I thought was great. Great parenting. Um, however, if you don't know, Bobby, clearly from what you can tell, is very rich. His parents, I don't know what they do exactly, but clearly I do know that they are some of the richest people in Brazil, and it's you could tell that his mom again is totally accepting that Bobby is a mutant, but we can't say it publicly because that may affect our business and our income. We don't want investors to pull back out of our business or businesses, whatever it is that they do, and then we don't have as much money as we do. Clearly, as long as they're doing money management pretty well, um yes, great parenting until. Yeah, totally, Randy. If they were doing money management pretty well, they should be fine if, some investors pulled out. Anyway, again, they don't want that public image of them supporting mutants, even though their son is a mutant, which is like so sad and disheartening. And again, we see this all the time where it's just ridiculous. If I'm not wrong, Bobby's family is richer than Tony. Probably. Like, I don't know all of the ins and outs. I just know that they're very rich, and clearly have probably some sort of political ties, would be my guess. Usually, when you're that rich, um, you have some sort of political ties as well, whatever they might be. And then Randy said, first half of the episode, I was in full mourning, especially with all the deaths. Yeah, totally. Then as the rage starts ramping up, it turns into what in the world by the end. Totally. I said that I feel like they just keep fitting so much in what is technically probably a little less than 30 minutes with like the recap, the intro, and then the end credits. It just like keeps, I don't know how they get so much in in such a short time. Like, it's totally wild to me how well like the story just rolls along. It doesn't feel like it's ever dragging. It also doesn't feel like it's ever moving too fast. The only time that I will say that it moved too fast was in that first life death episode, Motendo / Life Death Part One. I just felt like, again, Life Death was just like the life death portion of that episode was just a little short. Probably could have been like 2 or 3 minutes longer. But that's just me. There's my criticism. There's my criticism for Marvel. But there we are. But they keep fitting so much in. Yeah. And like at the beginning, to go back to some other points that obviously Gambit's funeral at the beginning, not great. Kurt had a great eulogy for Gambit. Kurt is just amazing. I love him. Love Nightcrawler. And what do I want to say? Basically, obviously, Rogue had a hard time grieving, as anyone should. But then when they're all in Mexico, and I thought it was great that they made it Day of the Dead, right, in Mexico, is where you celebrate your relatives and family members, friends who have gone to the afterlife, and you celebrate their lives, essentially. And this happens every year, right? And Kurt has the great words again, saying that to Rogue, like, you're not the reason that they died. You're not the reason that Magneto and Gambit have both passed away. And in fact, you're the one that helped them live a good life because of you, right? So good, right? And again, in conjunction with Day of the Dead, celebrating, I think that was really helpful for Rogue, right? And plus having the rest of the X-Men team be there for that. Obviously, she's not maybe necessarily over it, but maybe to first get over that first hump of like the grieving process, right? Randy, yeah, Kurt is my favorite X-Man. Then Storm. I don't know. I haven't been into the X-Men long enough to have one. And I always feel like my favorite characters are rotating, as like people always ask, like, who's your favorite character? It's like, well, right now it's this person. But like the more and more that I see of Kurt and a little bit that I have read about him, he's just such a good character. He's so good. And like, I don't know what it is, but like if you've read any like of the Krakoa era X-Men comics, and when Kurt is in there, he just always has like these philosophical lines. They're just so good. I don't know what it is. They just hit me some type of way that I'm like, man, Kurt, you're the man. You're the man, Kurt. But yeah, I haven't read much of his older stuff, but the more recent Kurt is great. What else? What else do we want to talk about in this episode? Does anyone have predictions for what we're going to see? What did you like? What did you not like? I think it's cool to have rotating faves until you settle. Totally. I have my general people that are my favorite, but like it always just varies, right? Like for a little bit, I have it over here somewhere. Oh. Like trying to get through. Oh man, glare. Some Miss Marvel. Like I love Miss Marvel. I didn't really know about her until I saw the show, which I thought was a great Disney Plus show. And then I was like, oh wow, and when I finally got into comics, I was like, oh, I just love Miss Marvel. She's so great. And part of that I really think is brought to life by Iman Vellani, like MCU wise. Absolute chaos. Yeah, this whole episode's been absolute chaos for sure. And yeah, I would think so, that they have to pay off the Forge connection to Bastion. They've been signaling it since he showed up. Totally, right? He was in Life Death Part 1, that episode when we saw some of those pictures on the wall in Forge's house. And supposedly Bastion was at Genosha. There was a quick, I haven't gone back to look, but someone took a screenshot of it. And was like, he's here. It happens very quickly. And I think they're really up close to his head, his like hair and his head. So it almost like if you didn't catch it, you would have thought it was Magneto. And which also makes sense given the fact that he basically saved Magneto and has now obviously taken him away from Genosha and captured him. I shouldn't have said saved. He did not save Magneto. I mean, in a way, he probably saved Magneto, but he didn't save him. He captured Magneto um, from Genosha. And then obviously we're getting him now, right? So I would assume that they're going to have that payoff. I thought the intro was interesting because they didn't have Storm is not in it, not today's at least. Um, Forge wasn't in it again either. I don't think. Um, but yeah, still Nightcrawler. But yeah, I don't know what the connection to Bastion is with Forge at all, to be honest. And I haven't looked further into it. If anyone knows, feel free to put it in if we want to talk about it. But um yeah, I think at some point, I don't know. I'm like waiting for Bishop to come back. Um However, he could just be like, I'm trying to take care of Nathan to make sure he's okay. Obviously, we know that he is okay, given that we've gotten Cable. I'm waiting for Bishop to come back. I'm assuming he will at some point. Um, yeah. Give me 1 second, folks. I have if you weren't on in the beginning, which most of you were not, my furnace, which heats our house, stopped working last night. Um, and yeah, trying to get someone to come out. So that's my life right now. It's still kind of cold here where I am at night. It's like only getting, well, the low is like getting down to like 27. So we kind of, and we have an almost 2 year old. We have space heaters, so we can put them in the room. She'll be okay, but it's gonna get kind of cold. Anyway, enough about that. Um, Back to X-Men 97. I think the the other cameo that we got today, right? Well, few cameos from people. I did not think we were going to get Thunderbolt Ross. I had mentioned this at the beginning, but Thunderbolt Ross was not expecting to see him in this um, at all. Was not expecting to see him in this at all, which was kind of cool. I don't think we'll end up seeing him again. Um, I'd be interested to see if we get more Avengers or other like cameo crossover folks in this. My guess is that maybe we will with the Avengers, given that we saw Steve. I think that we'll get some, especially if like the X-Men seem relatively outnumbered at this point, you would think, right? Like they just had a huge genocide with Genosha, and really the X-Men are the only like main like team that are fighting for mutants in terms of like using their powers to go up against these villains essentially, right? And I'm assuming that they're going to need some help at some point, and that might come in with some Avengers. I don't know. These are just thoughts. Anyone have any other kind of like, excuse me, thoughts, predictions, theories as we kind of talk more about X-Men 97, or we could talk about anything else. Again, we were talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, other future Marvel projects. We could do whatever we want. This is our live stream. We could do whatever we want. True. Very true, Randy. They seem severely overwhelmed, but we do have Cable. So there's always this heart here. This heart's in the way. Maybe that'll add some possible surprises. Totally. I think so. Like, I don't think that they'll undo Genosha, but it will be interesting to see what Cable has up his sleeve moving forward. Because obviously he will probably have access to the same tech potentially that Bastion has access to, right? So maybe if a possibility he could bring some of that back, they could maybe make it somewhat of a more fair fight, which will be interesting. I thought also his interest, which, you know, given the situation I get, but his interaction with Cyclops was interesting. It is interesting too that Cable knew, I feel like Cable knew Cyclops was his dad And it wasn't until like Cyclops finally was like, after Jean was in Cable's head and was like, and then realized, he was like, oh shoot, that's my son. That's Nathan. I find it interesting that Cable knows that Cyclops is his dad, but obviously Cyclops doesn't know. Anyway, an interesting little tidbit there where Cable's like, we don't have time for this, Dad. We gotta figure some stuff out here. Yeah, other than that, I agree though with Randy. Like, it was sad to see a lot of people who have died, especially at Genosha, right? Like Callisto, Leech. We saw Sebastian Shaw supposedly died. Emma, at least for the moment, we saw that we thought that she was dead, and we learned that she wasn't, which I think will be interesting moving forward, given the whole intertwining of psychological powers with her and Scott and Jean. There's just too many love triangles. This whole soap opera of X-Men. It's good, but sometimes it just gets a little crazy. We'll love a Cable story in the future. Yeah. I mean, we already know that we're going to get a second season. I would love a third season. I just really hope that they bring Bo back to write a third season. I don't know if they would ever do that publicly. I just say bring him on as a ghostwriter. Shoot, pay the man and just have him go as a ghostwriter at this point. Yeah, we still don't know where Maddie is. Obviously, she was on Genosha. I thought it was Randy. I thought it was confirmed that she died on Genosha from Bo himself. I think he put out a tweet because someone asked, and I'm almost positive that he tweeted back and confirmed that Maddie died on Genosha. I still thought it was very interesting that they like brought her. I thought we were going to see her again, but it wasn't going to be until like these like final 3 finale episodes, where I thought that she was going to help go up against Sinister, essentially, because we know that she has a vendetta against him, essentially. But I was surprised. I was really surprised that like, oh, here she is. She's just a delegate for the X-Men here on Genosha. I was like, wow, that was fast. But I'm almost positive she died, with confirmation from Bo that she died on Genosha. I could be wrong though. And he could also be lying to us. Not that I feel like Bo would lie, but he could be lying to not like give some stuff away. We'll see. But given the moment that she and Cable had, there was like, it was kind of like closure, right? Of like, kind of like closure for her to know that Cable survived and that he's okay. And so like her dying wouldn't necessarily be like, her story wasn't closed per se. Right. So we'll see. Sorry, folks. I'm just responding to this repairman that's coming. Any other kind of like thoughts? I don't really have anything else. I don't know enough like comic background or history to have an idea. Supposedly this is from like an Onslaught storyline. Again, I don't know a ton about it. I think it should be good, right? We have a 3-part finale coming up. It should be fun and exciting, and I'm excited for it. Like, I'm going to be sad when this show ends. Let's get real. I'm going to be super sad when this show ends. Super J, I appreciate you being here, my guy. You've been on for the first few of these, and I appreciate you coming on. And I know, Randy, you wanted to come on last time, but you didn't make it. If you're still here, Randy, I see that there's 2 people here. I don't know who it is. But I think we will wrap this up. I appreciate y'all coming out. This one wasn't as big as it was the last couple of weeks. Totally fine. I appreciate y'all coming out. Randy, thank you so much for making it this time around. glad I could hold a little bit of space for folks to chat about this episode without, spoiling things for others. I will still plan on doing this every week, barring anything crazy, until this show is over. And then I don't know. We might still do some stuff. Next week will be big. Yeah, I think so. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate you. And then I'll see you on Threads.